Business owners often stunt their own growth when it comes to hiring a team, and then they end up spending all of that time managing team, and they work harder than they ever have before and not focusing on the growth of the business. So Derek O'Dwyer talks to us today about some strategies on recruiting and retaining and management skills that you need to move your business forward. Derek, why did you become a business coach?
It's a slightly unusual story, really. I was living and working in the UK, and I wanted to move back to the west coast of Ireland, where I'm from. And I didn't want to go back and just be an employee and get a job. I wanted to actually set up my own business and make a difference in the community. And I was researching franchise opportunities, to be brutally honest, and I came across Actioncoach, mainly because it starts with A, one of the first ones I came upon. So then the whole business idea, I hadn't come across business coaching before, and the concept resonated with me immediately. And at the time, Action Coach was operating in rural New Zealand, rural Australia, rural Canada. And I thought, well, if it's working in those locations, it would certainly work for me where I'm going, which is very rural as well. So I wasn't kind of a coaching guru or a goals oriented guru before that. I just thought this is a business concept. It works. It helps people. It gets me ingrained in the community very quickly. And I felt based on what how Action Coach had propositioned the business to me that yeah, if I follow the system and basically just do what they say to do, it would work for me too. And that's what happened.
Great. So you've been coaching for how long now?
I joined Action Coach in 2002, so I'm 22 years a business coach now.
So over that period of time, what do you find is the most common challenge that business owners have that you get to talk to?
Well, I suppose given that I've been a business coach for so long, we've coached businesses now through the ups and downs of the economy. So when I joined, the economy was booming. So the biggest challenge at that time was kind of keeping the train on the tracks because everyone was doing so well. It was just about containing the business and then helping them to make money. We then went through the whole process or the period between 2008 and probably 2014, where it was survival mode, where it was kind of helping people to survive, regrow businesses, regain confidence in themselves and in the economy, and then refocus them on making profits as opposed to just survival. And that actually took a lot of time because in 2009, everyone started to work out, what's my break even? What's my break even? And as long as I'm doing that, I'm fine. Whereas then, when the shoots of recovery started to appear again, we had to refocus them on making a profit and getting more out of their business than they would from just being employed in a job. And that's what's happened um, primarily since then. We've been trying to help people grow businesses properly, learning from the mistakes of prior years, and helping them to develop good teams around themselves. So we find now that the business owner who understands that in order to grow their business, who needs to surround themselves with people that are better than themselves at particular roles in the business, we find that's the biggest challenge, but it's also the most rewarding area to work in as well, because that's where you get real growth.
So it's interesting because you see a lot of businesses that hire a team or hire people in their business, and often it doesn't work. What are the key reasons that it doesn't work?
Well, I think the main reason it doesn't work is that, and we're operating now in an environment where resources are scarce, and trying to find the right people can be tricky. So the risk we fall into is that when someone then joins the team, we are so grateful that they've joined that we forget to manage them. And what we're finding now is that when we're bringing on people, we're encouraging the business owner to not be afraid or to be brave enough to bring someone in, properly induct them into the business, explain what the expectations are, and effectively manage them closely until you understand that that person is working the way you want them to work, even though they might be in a senior position. We found probably over the last few years that a lot of people brought people in and then effectively abdicated responsibility to those people, and they weren't aligned with their goals. They weren't aligned with what the business is all about, and there was often failure then, which is very disheartening when you're paying big salaries to people, and it's not necessarily their fault. It's basically the owner not understanding how to manage senior people in the organization. So the biggest lesson there was that even when you bring on someone at a senior level, you have to make sure that they understand what the business is about, what your objectives are about, and that how they work is in line with how you want them to work. Unless and even by working closely together, they might have ideas that can be embraced and introduced into the business. That's good too, but very often just wasn't enough communication at the very early stages in recruiting senior members of the team.
So you mentioned resources are scarce. I mean, that can depend on the industry and market, but it does seem like there is is there really a shortage of good people out there? And what's the right mindset and steps that a business owner can take to actually attract people, the right people to their business?
Yeah, is there a shortage of good people? There probably isn't a shortage of good people. There's probably a lack of skill in attracting good people. Very often we find, and I would say that in order to find good people, you have to be prepared to get outside your own comfort zone and possibly pay those people what they're used to earning or what they could potentially earn, or look at what they could possibly do for your business. We would have a lot of business owners where we work with who don't necessarily pay themselves huge salaries themselves, and therefore that can become a ceiling then in terms of what you pay a team member. And psychologically, it's a big barrier to cross where you actually end up paying someone in your team more than you might be taking yourself, even though you might be generating profit in your company, etc. So there's a few kind of glass ceilings that we have to kind of burst through in terms of trying to hire in senior team members into the business. And then you asked the question about scarce resources. They're not. We just have to look in different pools. We often bring people in from abroad, and when you bring people in from abroad, there's a whole process there of applying for visas for them, getting them coming in, and again, you've got cultural integration to deal with when that happens. But at the same time, we look at everyone, and we try and then make sure that we're planning ahead and recruiting early enough so that every hire we do isn't kind of a knee-jerk reaction to the situation we find ourselves in that day. So planning for future growth is very important, and by doing that, then we kind of give ourselves time to attract and get the right people. Whereas we find that if it's just knee jerk reactions all the time, we tend to get the wrong people and we end up regretting it at a later stage. So part of my job with my clients is to teach them that the whole process of building out a very effective and efficient management team takes time and effort. And sometimes we find that when you're in that mode of building out your team and building out your executive team, it can sometimes distract you from growing the business. So, and that can be a challenge as well because you're reliant on the growth to pay for the new team members. But it takes time to attract them in as well. So I take a lot of time there teaching my clients about leadership and management and, setting the vision, the mission, making sure it's attractive for people to come in to a company that may not have embraced those things at all in the past.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you've said investments. So planning for the new hire. So what were some of the tips that you could give to business owners on how they plan for or research that kind of investment? What's the market value of that position?
Yeah, well, I think I suppose before you get to that stage, you have to they have to believe themselves that the company can get to the next stage. So you're very much, I suppose you're starting off with kind of looking at the 10-year, 5-year, 3-year plan for the business. And effectively you're presenting them with the ghost of Christmas future that if you don't kind of expand out your team, you won't be able to actually deliver on these goals. And you also have to explain to them that you won't get to those goals and achievements unless you have the team there in advance. It can't be the case of, well, when I get there, I'll build up my team. You have to teach them about the whole idea of investment. So one of the things that we do a huge amount there is we keep good track in terms of the cost of an employee, the return on investment from each employee. So as we take on employees, we will explain or teach the client what they would need to generate in terms of extra revenue to carry that person, so they're comfortable with it, because they'll be able to see if we've done our job correctly and we've introduced the correct kind of measures and controls in the business. We'll be able to map wage cost, salary cost with business growth. So, or we can also see sometimes where the business grows and the wage cost has gone down, which would sometimes suggest a need for additional resource. So you can show them that the person is already, there's money there already to pay for that person. And then you're kind of saying, you're encouraging them to have confidence in themselves and confidence to kind of grow their business with good team. But like I said before, the challenge is that they're suddenly paying these people big money. So your costs can kind of go exponential. So your sales and growth needs to do that as well. So it's like keeping plates spinning, if you like. There's lots of different angles to look at while you're investing and developing your team.
So that's really interesting because you've mentioned a point there where quite often through, business owners hire a team and then they're so busy managing the team, they're not actually managing the business. And they lose focus on the, goals and revenue that actually drives the business forward. What are some tips that you can give us business owners to help them manage team so that they don't lose that focus on the
Well, I think
goals?
the important thing with managing team is that everyone is clear. You have a proper structure of meetings, have a proper structure of accountability. In Action Coach, we're big believers in ownership, accountability, and responsibility, and it's important then that all team members understand that concept. And then one of the things that I would focus a lot on is making sure that there are effective measurements in place to ensure that the team member and the business owner know what's actually happening in the real life of numbers, because the numbers don't lie. And sometimes people look primarily at the financial numbers of a business, there can be a lag on finances, but there's never a lag on daily, weekly, monthly activity. So if we've done our job correctly with our client, they'll know based on activity, pre-sale, pre-tender, if it's a tender type business, whether they're doing enough to get enough leads and whether they're doing enough to actually convert enough business into business, and whether that's transpiring into actual sales and real results. Then, so I suppose underpinning business development and team development, the numbers need to be maintained all the time because they're the best barometer. I often find clients asking me like what's it like outside? What are other business owners finding at the moment? They're asking me about the economy, and I would often say to them, so the best indicator of the economy for us is our own trackers that we have in place to measure the number of leads we're getting, our conversion rate, our inquiry level, our sales rate. And I say they're the best barometer for you because you might be working 3, 6, 9 months ahead of time yourself anyway. And I suppose, in a sense, you're trying to get them to trust themselves because they're asking that questions because they're fearful of where they're at, and they don't want to lose control either.
Yeah,
But
it's interesting. So the sales is a result of the activity. So activity is the metric that you use to track. I
yes,
love that.
yes, yes,
Yeah, it's interesting because it's so easy to fall into that trap of all the different, external impacts that can, um, you know, impact business, whether it's, economy that, from a war or COVID, etc. There's always some external factor that can play a part. What's a tip for a business owner that can help them have an open mindset to think differently?
Well, I think that they can only control what they can control. That's they do need to be aware of external impacts, like the opportunities and threats that might exist in in an environment like economy, like global impacts that that we've all experienced over the past 10 years. But if they spend more time looking at their own business, so if we look at a typical SWOT analysis where you look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and the strengths and weaknesses are the internals that exist in their own company. What are the strengths of their own company? Are they enhancing those all the time? And more importantly, what are the weaknesses of their company? And are they addressing those on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis with their team? I find that's the best way to keep them focused. And very often, when you go through that exercise with clients of saying, what are the weaknesses? And let's pick some of those to actually work on over the next few weeks or months. It focuses the mind an awful lot more and away from some of the distractions that might exist. Because some people get caught up in global events that have no bearing on them whatsoever. And now I'm not saying switch off completely, but I would certainly say to business owners, control what you can control and focus on that primarily. And we often say to people, when you own your own business, you need to resign as general manager of the universe. Just do your own thing. It's probably the most important thing to do because your team need you as well. You see.
I like that. So you need to resign as general manager of the universe. So, Derek, can you give me an example of a business that you've worked with that had a challenge around recruiting the right people and how you helped them?
Yeah, so about 4 or 5 years ago, I started working with a client who was in the middle of a toxic partnership with another, obviously his partner, and he had kind of in his own mind made the decision to break away from that partnership and set up on his own. So I helped him through that transition, which was turbulent for a number of months because there was a confidence thing and there was belief thing that he could do it on his own because he had kind of, I suppose, relied on the partner for so long. So when he started up, then the first thing to do was to start building out his team because he had enough business coming in to keep him busy. But once we set in place, let's say, objectives for the business, first of all, showed him how to kind of track his business, taught him about the financials in the business correctly, and taught him how to measure and control things, he started to then believe that, I can actually do this. So we actually started, first of all, by saying, okay, what should your business look like in 3 years' time? What would the organization chart look like in that time, or what would it need to be to deliver these results? What are the resources that we would actually need to make this happen, and the skill sets? And luckily, in that situation, he wasn't the type of person to say, if it's up to me, it's up to me to make the success. I have to do everything. He was happy to delegate, which was very useful. And sometimes we have the challenge where people want to do everything themselves, and they bring in team members and then work harder than they ever did. So in this particular case, he was happy to delegate. He was happy to use resource from wherever he could use resource. He was happy to try different methods of recruitment. He was happy to try different. He was happy to delve into the gig economy where you could take on people for particular tasks, and if you didn't need them, you didn't need to hire them. So it enabled him to try different things very quickly and look at new ways of doing work. So he outsources some of his work now to people who are abroad who can work remotely for him. He's built out some of his team that way. He's brought on graduates and actually trained them into the way he wants to do the work. He has actually taken on a person recently now who's being paid probably twice as much as what he pays himself, which is another kind of breaking the glass ceiling. And 4 years later, he's just he was at, let's say, 100,000 turnover when I started with him, so very small. He's now going to do 800,000 this year. Plus, he's bought another business which will add on another 600,000 to the turnover this year. So there's a whole kind of, it's very impressive the growth that they've achieved over a short period of time because they understood from the outset that their business was a people business. They needed people to do the work. They built the team. He's moved offices nearly. I think he's on his third move now because the team is expanding. So it's very useful. But looking back, and I think sometimes we don't measure success correctly. We should measure success sometimes by looking backwards to see where have we come from. and what have we achieved, as opposed to looking ahead all the time and being disappointed that we're not as far forward as we should be. So if I look back in his business, say, where have we come from? It's very impressive in a short period of time. When you think we've worked through COVID in the same period of time, and we've worked through kind of 2 years of kind of stagnation, if you like. But at the same time, he's really plowed on. And I think he's backed himself as well, and he's surrounded himself with good team members, and he invests in them as well. And he's put two of his team members now on management training with me, like so. He believes in team. So that would be one story.
And what was the industry?
Consulting engineering.
Consulting engineering.
So the civil engineers and doing kind of structural design and things like that for businesses. So all
Well,
his
that's
team are kind of professional.
massive growth. Is that
Huge.
something that he thought he could achieve at the beginning? I mean, 100
I
starting on
think,
100,000. Did he ever
yeah,
think the
probably
business possible?
probably not. I think he was probably trying to replicate where he was in his partnership. So let's say his partnership before might have been turning over 200. So I think he thought that if he would get back to that, he would have a nice lifestyle. So it's far surpassed that now, and he's now thinking of the next stage, which is kind of not wealth management, but getting into wealth management. So how do you reinvest, and how do you do more? So the first step on that was we were thinking about kind of taking the money from the business and investing it, and pensions and stuff like that. But really, the best way to kind of make your money work is to invest in an additional business, which he has done. And in addition, there, the I think the good thing was that like it's nearly a no money down deal. So he's basically taking on the turnover of another business and paying for that over the from the profits of the company itself. So it really is a no brainer, really. And we're putting the same systems that he has in place in his business into the new business as well.
So not only did he make a great profit from his existing business, he would then use those funds to go and invest in another business to create real
Yes,
wealth. I love that.
correct, correct.
So the key for him was really success around team, and that often is the challenge or the ceiling where most business owners get stuck is, like you said, you hire a team and then you work harder than you ever have before managing the team. So what kind of was the key to success with him? He obviously was great at recruiting people, re- training them, but what about retaining them? How's
Yeah,
he?
I would say the retention is his strongest skill. There's a good team there. There's a good mix of skills. There's a good mix of people, and he himself might not be the best, I suppose, nurturer or whatever of people, but he has team members who are good at that, and he has team members who all want to get on. And I think just the whole culture and vibe of the business is good. It's fairly young, and he doesn't constrain them, if you like. So he's not afraid to give them responsibility. So I think people who have come in and joined him are all developing at a good pace themselves. So it wouldn't be necessarily attractive for them to go anywhere else. And they would get every challenge they wanted to get in terms of their own career development in this place, and they can see teams developing within the team as well. And some people have also stepped up into management roles, and some people as well. Not everyone wants to be a manager of people, so we recognize that. So if someone just wants to do their job and be better at their job, that's okay too. If people want to develop and run teams and delegate work and kind of build their career that way, that's also okay. So his team at the moment he's about 16 on the team now. So not a huge team, but it's still a big team compared to where he started off.
Did you say 60 or 16? Was that your
16,
Irish
16, 16, sorry, accent.
accent? 16 in his team, and how many when he started? Just himself and his
Himself,
partner.
and one other. So there was
Yeah.
two that kind of set up, one himself and one junior person.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's something that you just said there where you said he wasn't great at managing people, so he hired somebody to do that for him. I think it's interesting. We know the saying that you should hire someone smarter than you or have your people or team around you that are better than you are at the particular jobs. But that's not always the case. And I think that, would you say that's the key to his mindset around team?
Yeah, I would say like now he's quite good at managing, but he I suppose he allows other people to manage as well. Like and I think the if we look at where a lot of business owners have come from, like they've come from being possibly an employee themselves to suddenly going to self-employed to then suddenly having teams. So they might not have had any management experience themselves in the past, and where they then when they have a team, then they sometimes think, oh, well, I need to get them to do something for me, so let me ask them if they'll do me a favor, as opposed to thinking, okay, no, they're my team, they're working for me, um, their success is my success. I need to treat this like a business. So the important thing was is to get the client understanding that it's okay for someone else to be better than you at a particular function in the business. But at the end of the day, it's your business. They've chosen to work for you. So give them an environment that they can work well in and give them an environment that they can grow in. And everything works out in that way. And sometimes then people can outgrow a business, that's true. But my objective with my clients is to make sure that it would be very difficult for someone to leave because we're growing at a rate that's greater than the individual is growing themselves. So they should never leave because they want a greater challenge. They should leave for some other reason, be it geographical or something else, but never that they're not being challenged within the company they're working in.
Mm. And something else you just said, which I think is really important to highlight, that often business owners don't have any skills or haven't got any experience in managing team. And so learning those management skills, learning business is important, obviously, and that's the benefit of having a business coach, but also learning management skills and leadership skills in your business is almost like it's another whole skill set that's so important, isn't it, when you're looking at
Mm.
recruiting and retaining a team to help you get to the next level of success.
Yeah, so the I suppose the challenge is that some of the clients we take on would not necessarily have been academic powerhouses. They might have kind of been a trade, or they might have kind of left school early, and so therefore the whole concept of even learning things like that in a kind of a structured environment can be alien to them. But I always find that if I can get my clients listening to books or reading books, the speed of their development it's exponential. Like they just start to get it a lot quicker because they see that they're not alone themselves. They see that other people are doing this. They see that other people have the same challenges that they have had. And then, within Actioncoach, then we have a number of training programs ourselves now with management training, leadership training, and the way they're delivered, which is week by week, which allows people to implement things that they've learned on the course that week, is very beneficial because then we get feedback the following week as to how it's working for them in their business. So the current management training, the current leadership training is very good, really. So that's where I find that we can make the biggest difference is getting them to understand that the more that they learn, the more that they'll earn, and the more that they'll learn, then the better able to manage their team will be as well. And in Action Coach, we have the cycle of business where we kind of teach business owners that their responsibility is to build the team. It's the team's responsibility then to kind of look after the clients. The clients then look after the business, and the business then looks after the business owner. So once we can get them thinking that way, that's then we know we're kind of on a winner. Where if the business owner constantly thinks that they have to look after all the clients and the clients love them and it's all about them, it's very difficult to kind of grow that beyond that because they're the limiting factor at that point.
Amazing. So, three quick questions to finish. What's your favorite business book that you recommend?
I suppose the simplest big. Can I give you two?
Yes, often there's two.
So
That's
the first one, I suppose, just in terms of making money and things like that in the business, we've got a book inside an action coach, which is basically instant cash flow, which is basically it introduces business owners very quickly to all the different ways that they can improve their business through cash flow strategies. Because very often we find that people think, oh, I need more sales in my business, or I need more profit in my business. So how do I do that? And all they can think of is they need to advertise more using a medium that they might have always used, which probably doesn't work for them, or they need to cut costs in the business. So when we introduce them to the concept of instant cash flow, and we introduce them to the hundreds of strategies that we have for increasing sales, increasing profit, increasing all the metrics in the business, and profit strategies as well, which do include driving down costs, but which also include many other much easier to work on strategies. It's just mind opening for them all. So we encourage all our clients to look at that book. And then I suppose in terms of other business books, it's not a business book really, but I suppose Think and Grow Rich would be one of my favorite ones. And it's a book that was written, I think, back in the 1930s. But the concept is powerful, and it's a multi-layered book. And the whole concept of it is around that you become what you think about, and you have to basically understand that where your focus goes, money follows. And the whole idea there is to get people focused on the right things, and kind of it's a little bit like putting a set of blinkers on for business owners, because we need them to be focused on what they're about. And if they don't have any goals or targets and things like that, well, how then can they bring their team on? So that book really kind of focuses the mind and saying, what will happen to you will be based on what you think about, what you put into your head, what you allow to kind of grow inside in your head, and what you get rid of from your head as well. So it's just it's a quick book. It's people get it. But what I found more recently, the more times I've read it, I find that there's many layers to the book, and you can't read it in one sitting. You have to kind of understand it, read it, understand it, and then apply it. And very often we don't do that. We read it, we get it, but we don't apply it. But I think once people start to apply that thinking, it's again groundbreaking. I know it's only a book, but there's a lot in it.
And who's been the best business coach or mentor for you throughout your career?
Well, I suppose we'd all say, I suppose Brad, who founded Action Coach, would be one of the leaders up there. I currently work as well with Bruce Wilson in Action Coach as well, who's a kind of, I suppose, a different type of business mentor, in that he kind of deals a lot with getting kind of breaking through glass ceilings. And I suppose it's funny, like we're business coaches ourselves, but we're also business owners ourselves, and we also probably have the same failings and as a lot of business owners we deal with. And if we don't kind of look at ourselves critically as well and see where we can grow, then we're going to lose clients because we're not growing at the same speed they are. So I've used a few throughout the years, but I would say kind of Bruce and Brad would be the main ones for me.
Yes, we're always learning and growing ourselves. And then the third question, Derek, is best piece of business advice you ever received?
Um, Well, strangely, like this is a bit twee now, but the when I joined Action Coach the first day, the advice from the Action Coach team were, if you follow the system, you'll be successful. And because I was at that time, I was buying into a system that had been proven to work, and so they said if you follow the system. So when I joined, Action Coach wasn't in Ireland, it wasn't in the UK or anything like that. So all I did then was found the dollar sign and replaced it with the euro sign, and that's the only change I made, change the materials I ever received. Maybe that's laziness, but I just followed the system and it worked. So when we go into business owners, then we're always trying to systemize it, because if we can systemize it, we can measure it, we can manage it, and we can improve it. And then by systemizing it as well, you're kind of building a structure. You're building a platform that you can grow on, because systemization requires metrics, management, and all those other good things that are associated with building a good business. So one bit of business advice is make sure you have a system and then follow it and make sure the system works. And then as the business grows, tweak it.
Great. Derek O'Dwyer, thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you.
Michelle Adams, your host here. Hats off to you for committing to your learning by listening to this podcast. And if you'd like some help implementing some of these strategies, then click the link in the description to find your local action coach. They can help you put these strategies into action and take your business and your life to the next level. In the meantime, like and subscribe so that you're the first to get our next episode. We'll see you soon.